Hi, in this video we'll be going over power options for all your CPAP devices. First we'll be discussing AC options, that being just the standard wall outlet that you'd plug into. The only thing to really keep in mind is just that every modern CPAP machine comes with a universal power supply, which will allow you to plug into a 110 all the way up to 220. So the only thing you would need would just be a wall adapter for whatever country that you're in to use their format for plug-in. But beyond that, you wouldn't need any other cords or adapters, which makes it pretty straightforward when just plugging into a wall regardless of where you're at. With that being said, it's definitely a different story when it comes to the batteries, and there's a lot more variables that you have to take into account that we'll be going over. So one common scenario is when you want to plug into a camper or a vehicle. Something more familiar would be the cigarette outlet of a vehicle. More likely than not, that's just going to be a standard 12 volt DC outlet. And majority of CPAP machines are going to be 12 volt. So a lot of them will offer just a standard cord, a straight cord that'll just plug into the machine directly into the DC outlet. So that is one thing to consider, whether or not your machine is 12 volt or 24 volt. So if you do have a 24 volt machine, example being all ResMed CPAP machines are all 24 volt, you will need a converter, a 12 to 24 volt converter. Those tend to be a little bit more bulky and a little bit more expensive, but that would be the only option if you were to want to plug in to a cigarette outlet. Another thing to keep in mind is that some machines that have an internal power supply won't have a battery option, nor will they have a DC outlet option. So what you would have to do in that case would be to get a inverter. So a DC to AC inverter. So essentially a cable, they'll have like a wall outlet plug coming off of it that you would then plug your machine into. Prime example of this would be the XT Fit by Apex. The only option would be essentially to have an inverter for a power option. So with that being said, almost every other CPAP manufacturer, they'll have their own battery pack, or there'll be a third-party battery option as well. They'll just plug straight into your machine. Some machines will even have a dedicated DC in port. Example of that would be the S8 by ResMed and the ICH2 by Apex. They'll actually have a dedicated DC port that you can just plug into. Otherwise, there are third-party options that will come with the proper cords just to directly plug your battery into your machine. And that's where you got to really keep in mind whether or not the machine is 12 or 24 volt. Again, majority of them are 12, so that's not really something that you have to consider too much with it. Good examples of third-party options are going to be the Pilot by Metastrom. Now, Metastrom, they actually do create a battery that is the Pilot 12 and the Pilot 24, and they are going to come with the proper cords, mainly for the main brand. So the 12, you'll have the cords for the Philips, and the 24 you'll have for the ResMed, and that'll also come with their travel options as well. So lastly, one other thing that you would have to consider, not too prevalent, which is going to be mainly true for the oxygen concentrators, is some third-party batteries. You do need to be mindful of whether or not it is a Pierson Wave. That is mainly true for if you want to plug into a third-party battery option for oxygen concentrators. It's fairly uncommon for CPAPs, but some CPAP machines won't be able to run without the Pierson Wave. So that's just one thing to keep in mind if you're having issues with that. Sometimes you can use a male to female DC connector from that battery and from the CPAP machine to kind of help with that. Sometimes it'll run then. That's why I always kind of recommend that you use their dedicated battery just for troubleshooting options. If you do go with a third party, that's just a couple things you need to consider. But if you have any other questions, feel free to call RespShop.com anytime at 866-936-3754. We are open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so West Coast time, Washington time.